So you should all see right now. Do you want to go? Do you want to take it from here, Urmila?
Go ahead, Marie. You wanted to say something about? You wanted to start with a map?
Yes. So everybody should see.
Yeah, go ahead.
Give everybody permission to go ahead and edit this map, and you should see popping up on the left-hand side a set of icons. If you go to the second one from the top that looks like a star, if you click on that 2 times, it will give you the ability to put a marker that shows where in the world you are. And that way we can see where everyone is coming from. And please feel free to make a note as well in the chat where you are, what the weather's like, and that kind of thing, so we can get a sense of where everybody is right now. I see some in the northwest United States. I see India. I myself am currently up here in Sweden. Los Angeles. Hi, Debbie. Right, awesome. And I'm now going to turn the mic over to Urmila Samson and let you go ahead with your presentation. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Marie. That was very nice. So I'm happy to see a number of my friends here as well, and happy to see all the new friends coming in. The topic is healing relationships and healing Mother Earth, and unlike the normal conference kind of presentation where we use our minds, from my mind to your mind, I'd rather we go slightly into, not slightly, but go into our bodies a bit and become aware of our breathing. And so we are all more in a receptive mode, receptive to each other, and kind of remembering the relationships we have. And by relationships, I don't just mean with people, but the relationships we have with all things living and non-living, the situations in our lives, the relationships almost at a cosmic level, at a spiritual level, at a heart level. And so if we can all kind of tap into that and move into that kind of space, rather than receiving this as a talk or something to be dealt with through only the mind. So maybe you can close your eyes and get into a very relaxed position in your chair, wherever you're sitting in your home. And now I'll start. I'll be reading, and then we'll throw it open for discussion. "20 years ago, a princess of the flowers was born to me. My friend gazed down upon the little baby and declared her princess of the stars. We laughingly agreed that she was a star-flower princess. Sarah knew nothing about our secret. Yet 3 years later, she returned from a walk in my ancestral village and presented my friend with a flower in the shape of a star. Children are magic. They are unique, marvelous, beautiful. They hold great promise and potential. We did too. We forget that we were children once. We remember what it was like to feel the feeling of infinite possibility. I am tempted at this point to go on a tirade of how over the centuries the powers that be have perfected a psychological manipulation of the minds of the masses, instilling fears of various kinds and on many levels that sits deep in our psyche and more or less decide the way we live our lives, pretending that we have choices, and how the systems and structures of urban life have imprisoned our bodies and our way of life in a stranglehold of oppression. But here I will restrain myself, for there is enough written and spoken on this. Talking about it only perpetuates what we can strive to transform. Is it an illusion or not? Are these all mental constructs that we can deconstruct and reconstruct? As my little girl grew up, I found myself becoming a more and more demanding perfectionist. I tried to mold her into my idea of how a good girl should behave, to feed her my idea of a perfect diet, engage her in my idea of healthy activities to build body, mind and spirit. We went outdoors in the mornings and evenings. I read her good books. We listened to good music. When she awoke, I would carry her to the windows and balconies and say good morning to the sun, the trees, the earth, the flowers, the clouds. I would care for her skin, her hair, her body, her clothes. My life was all wrapped around my little girl. 4.5 years later, my son Rain was born. He was a Chota Bheem. That's a character from Indian mythology who was very strong and powerful. I never felt so torn in my life. I could not bear to be apart from Saha to go to hospital. After many hours of labor, the doctor insisted I go for a cesarean section for the safety of the child. This meant I had to stay in hospital longer till the stitches healed. My husband John, my mother and a friend took great care of Sahya along with his extended family support. But I continued to feel broken-hearted at being separated. At last, when I reached home, I was reunited with my little family, and it felt very fulfilling. I went through the same internal tugging of my heartstrings when my second son Neom was born. In some ways less intense because I knew that Sahya, Rain and John were together, but in other ways more as I could not give myself wholly to the new baby as I had two other little ones constantly requiring attention. By this time I had no energy or imagination left. Neom was just Neom, and what is Neom he turned out to be. This is a very minor trauma in comparison to the terrible traumas many children go through. But please be patient with me, and throughout this article please ignore the inconsistencies and any theories that are not researched. The aim of this piece is to open up different ways of thinking about learning and ways of being as individuals, families, communities, and societies. The reasons I narrated the above story are multi-layered. Many mothers go through such emotional challenges, and in fact much worse. Many children are put through separation anxiety repeatedly during their childhood. These kinds of repeated experiences cause a fragmentation within that have far-reaching consequences. In our personal lives, we feel a void that is something like a bottomless pit. When we come across human pain and suffering, our senses feel polarized. We become needy and both manipulative and open to manipulation by people and systems. The deepest wound we are usually unaware of is our separation from nature, Mother Earth herself. Had I been a tribal woman, my children would have been born in my hut, the other children sleeping or playing nearby. The children would have been born close to the earth, not several stories up, placed in metal beds. The first sights, sounds, fragrances and experiences would have been holistic and natural. They would have so many close connections with people, animals, insects and plants that separation anxiety would belong to some strange and unbelievable reality, in fact quite unreal. Earlier I mentioned how I turned into a demanding perfectionist, trying to mold Sahya to my idea of life. This intensified with the birth of Rain. It is only when Neom was born that I could not hold it together any longer. The more I tried, the more impossible it became. I started feeling that horrible feeling where everything is slipping away from my control and that all my plans and projections were repeatedly being reduced to nothing. Many fights and crises later, that de-escalated into arguments and finally into discussions, I realized that my whole trip had been an ego trip. I had wanted the children to be a reflection of me as a great mother. I was not really concerned with who they were inside and what their journey on earth was meant to be. Back to if I had been a tribal woman. I would not have had this type of ego. I would have had a primordial type attachment to my children that would naturally thin as they matured. I would not have had any psychological damage to visit upon them. I would not have added to the void that is caused by birth traumas and other socially sanctioned traumas. Then began a journey of deep watching, listening, and sensing. I started to perceive more deeply the very being of my children, and through them of my husband and myself. From being concerned with the distractions of the externals of the children and the world, I began an inward journey. Inner healing began. I started to be led to and drawn towards people, books, situations, films, knowledge that supported my inward journey. Insights particular to myself and my immediate world came from apparently nowhere. My emotions began to mellow and my fears disintegrate. Certain practices became a part of my life that helped clarify and purify energy. Gradually people got drawn to me and I was able to connect people who were good for each other. My husband John too chose to no longer continue in his dental profession and stepped into the unknown. I began to feel like life was happening through the body being a sort of vehicle. A feeling took hold in my heart that if I could take this experiment outside the family to wider groups and communities, the ripple effects could create a tidal wave of change. I came out of my cocoon to speak once a month about homeschooling and unschooling. These talks led to invitations to talk to groups. Though I noticed a great fear about future financial stability among parents, within 3 years there was a huge surge in numbers of families beginning to homeschool in India. The first discussion groups, websites and blogs appeared. I had been interviewed once in a while over the years by major newspapers before Neom was even born. But now, articles appeared in 14 papers in just 1 year alone. This may sound like I was the cause of the sudden surge in homeschooling in the country, but actually it is more like its time had come. And homeschooling, learning societies, which I will talk about soon, and I got connected simultaneously. Learning Societies Unconference, which is a nationwide annual gathering and an online discussion list connecting groups of communities of rethinkers, holistic healers, learners of all ages, speakers, organic farmers, people in social media, homeschoolers, unschoolers, alternative educators, activists, explorers, and people involved in experimenting with life and ways of being. This was very exciting for me, as I could be with increasing numbers of people, groups of people and communities who were creating living learning spaces outside of the existing manipulative systems. Part of me was carried away with the stories of the way of life of indigenous people that I heard from people in Learning Societies Unconference. Part of me started to wonder why these peaceful people were always wiped out or dominated by aggressive nations. Did they not have the spiritual strength to transform violence? When I spoke excitedly about aspects of tribal community life, skeptics would tell me not to glamorize their way of living, which was actually very hard. I realized that a major reason for human progress is to make things easier: locomotion, barter, protection, storage. So where did emotions like greed for things, money and power emerge? Where did today's structures and systems that fragment our psyche, fragment our wholeness, separate us from each other and Mother Nature originate? There are many theories and hypotheses that attempt to answer these questions. but I am not as bothered about probable causes as I am with some probable solutions. The structures and systems were created for the convenience of the rulers, dividing people into rulers and servers or servants. Democracy does not really give the servers choices. A friend, Jinan, points to literacy as the cause of its fragmentation. It causes us to be unnaturally mind-heavy, ignoring the being. For the purpose of putting forward my probable solutions, let us assume this to be true. If we assume this to be true, that the most fundamental separation happens within, that words and ideas literally take over the mind and create a separate kingdom that dominates the being, we can begin to understand how ego and different types of greed dominate our own selves. Psychological manipulation through media messages, especially igniting emotions, becomes the key to a few people controlling the whole world. We are one consciousness. Our inner environment is reflected in the outer environment. Even good guys operate from ego and the type of greed. Even if we are full of heartfelt intentions, we lead with our mind, which through separation from the being has become the house of ego and different types of greed. Our emotions are easily manipulated by words and ideas. We are all one consciousness. It is not a question of liberating oppressed people from oppressors. It is a question of liberation of all human beings from the stranglehold of word ideas and the mind. In that sense, we are both the oppressors and the oppressed. I am not saying that we go back to tribal life or illiteracy, though it is interesting that the Kogi tribe sent us a message through the documentary film From the Heart of the World, and they have rejected literacy. A few of them are selected to become leaders, for which they have to spend 9 years in a dark cave. They become leaders only after 9 years of deep inner work. We are complex beings with imagination and creativity. The questions we have to explore are how do we learn from indigenous people how to remain whole, connected, and unfragmented within the self and together in community and with all earth. Starting from birth practices, how we communicate with each other, how we learn, how we resolve conflicts, how we heal, how we organize our society, political system, how we organize a society, And here I have already contradicted myself. For if we start to question these and come up with answers from our ego mind, we will no doubt come up with better solutions that will end up being new wine in old casks, and will only be a more sophisticated version of the same truth. The transformation will have to start from within, so the outer world is just a reflection of the inner environment. For me, the first work is of healing the fragmentation inside. However, this becomes a bit chicken and egg, as I see a lot of struggle to begin and then sustain inner work while grappling with survival with the current systems, especially money systems in place. Still, I like to be optimistic. My own journey with money is a long story on its own. I feel we should speak about money more, explore new ways of looking at and thinking about money, and get really open-minded, open-hearted, and creative in our way of living and being. Becoming whole is now more about healing emotionally, physically, creating a lifestyle that is integrated and sustainable. For this, we need to simultaneously create systems that are humane and life-affirming, that help all life thrive and flourish, which will originate and manifest from the center of our whole being, rather than only our mind ideas, though it will include our mind ideas. One important practical challenge that comes to me that needs to be overcome, that will go a long way to address this void inside that is almost universal, is the symbiotic generation and flow of love of self and other and between self and other. I find that we have grown up with so much criticism that everyone, the whole human race today, is too low on a feeling of self-worth for the health of the individual and all life on earth. Extroverts seem high in self-esteem, but it may not necessarily be so. They are still hiding the void inside. This is evident from other behaviors they exhibit. The void is, according to me, nearly universal. It can be filled with love, and love is a funny thing. One can give it only if one has it, and one can have it if one can give it. Our work on this earth today is to conjure love up almost from nowhere and somehow fill ourselves and each other up with love. In my practical experience, one way to start is to stop being critical and judgmental of the self and others. How can citizens and governments, nations, corporations, etc. communicate and negotiate with deep understanding required unless we figure this out on an individual, family, community and local level? We are one consciousness. To understand the other, we must understand the self. The relationship with the other is vital for healing. Healing of our close relationships will heal each self, which in turn will heal the planet. Can we see each person in our lives who seem to be there randomly by chance and sometimes by choice to be our principal teachers? And can we see that the only subject we must major in is love? Is it possible to be really very good to yourself and those closest to you, to grow a big, healthy, happy sense of self? For too long we have lived with an attitude of miserliness and poverty on all levels, not just monetary. It is time to be courageous, generous and creative with self included. Open the whole being to infinite possibilities and human potential beyond imagination. Can you see the star-clad prince and princess you were born as? Can you see the jewel in your loved one, in each and every one, in the person you hate the most? Can you see the importance of seeing this in everyone? There is great healing potential in personal relationships. One good, healthy relationship in each life can heal each other and Mother Earth. When I read this article to my family, to the feedback, I realized that I started somewhat from a heart space and real experience and then kind of went into a head thing. And another thing I realized is that my meaning may not have come across, which is that there is a great need for support and to support, for support and to support. I've spoken a lot about love, but not about support. It's with my family's help, support and love that I'm able to feel the fragmentation within me and without. They hold a mirror up for me to see myself. They catch me in inconsistencies and contradictions. But they do it with the utmost love and care, which helps me feel held. This is my hope and prayer for everyone. Let these primary love and support systems grow into larger support systems at the local level, including all our needs, gradually decreasing dependence on the larger machinery. A sort of connecting web that is personal, global and natural. This is my hope and prayer for the world. Let us close our eyes for a moment. Leave this swirl of words and ideas. Breathe deeply and reach a place of silence inside. Allow your breath to settle into its natural rhythm. Become aware of that rhythm. Whenever you feel ready, gently open your eyes. We can open for questions now.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Urmila, are we on the correct slide here?
Or share?
I just wanted to check. Are we on the correct slide? Oh,
Pardon?
I'm still seeing the first
I didn't get
slide.
that, Marie. Yes, this is the last slide.
Okay, obviously something just on my system then. Thank you. I
I'm on
apologize
slide
for the
10.
interruption.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that, Priya. Was everyone gone so deep inside that they can't emerge? No worries, Marie. Right, Kathy Ann. How can we communicate with the children? And Saraswati said that she agrees with the only subject one should major in is love. And Priya says at how we are all supportive each other and the universe. Yeah. So Kathy Ann's question is how to communicate with the children. I'll just share with you, Kathy, that as I was mentioned in the presentation, I had no need to communicate it with my children. It was just I realized that I had to bring a lot of change within myself. And once I brought this change within myself, it automatically communicates to the children. Does that help? Yes, Aravinda? You can click on the talk button and
Hi, can you hear me?
ask your question.
Okay. Hi, Urmila. So, a lot of times I think, we talk about this relationship between the inner change and the change in the world. And
yes, very clearly.
And I personally, being someone who's kind of always involved in trying to change the world, it's sometimes hard to really make the connection and really, a lot of times it seems a little flaky, to put it bluntly. But recently I saw an example, so I just thought I would bring it up, of somebody who really was able to see the shining star in someone in a most unlikely place, and I don't know, and it definitely made a change in the world, and so just the power of her compassion was so great that recently, I don't know if you saw 3 days ago, a 20-year-old man entered a school with a gun and 500 rounds of ammunition. And so, I don't know all the details, but he entered the school office, and the woman who was working there as the bookkeeper, she just talked to the boy, and you can hear the audio of her conversation with the boy, because she immediately called the emergency service line, but at the same time she was talking to the boy. And through her compassion, she got him to put down the gun. And she saw, I mean, it's just an amazing, it's amazing to hear her, and to hear her actually tell the boy, you know, that I want you to know that I love you. And he gave himself up to the police.
Yeah.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. These stories give me goosebumps. For years I've been looking for examples like these. I mean, I have so many stories. There was one, the first I ever heard was about an uncle of mine in Santa Cruz, Bombay, and a kind of thief and broke into his home, and he was alone at home and elderly, and this guy threatened him with a knife. And my uncle just spoke to him and chatted with him, and the next thing he was giving him a job, and there was no violence at all. And also of this, I read in Resurgence magazine, which is one of my favorite magazines, where this, what do you call them? A missionary girl in Australia was gang raped, and she just told her family, is there no way we can reach their heart? And so the next day they went into the community, and they talked to the boys, and she shared her pain. And she cried, and then the boys all started to cry, and they came and gave her gifts. And so yeah.
I just feel like I should add that I think we need both. I think that I think that often it seems like, I'm not saying anyone here is doing this, but sometimes one gets the feeling that this inner work is offered as something more fundamental or more basic, and therefore should be done instead of doing work in the world. And I think that they should be integrated, and that you should see the importance of both. Yeah. Mhm. Mm.
Yes. The key is integrated. I agree with you. Yes. I agree with you. When we say both, it kind of gets separated into this or that, either or. Whereas when you use the word integrated, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can. It's okay if I share another example.
But during our work, we use the work that we're doing outside.
Yeah. So I was at a demonstration with people who were displaced from their villages by a large project, and the people all went to the office of the concerned authorities who were in charge of giving the approvals for this project, the Nanawa Valley Development Authority. So we were at the NVDA office, all outside the gate, and finally that official came. And so we were all shouting and, demanding an appointment, demanding that they answer various questions. And, Medha Patkar, she was speaking to the office, kind of summarizing everything, and she said to him, and we know that if you also lived in this area, if your house was also going to be affected by this project, you would be with us on this side of the gate. So making this direct appeal to the person, and just not putting us on two sides, but just assuming from the beginning that actually we are all on the same side. I mean, I've seen her after a large rally and action, she'll be on the phone with the chief minister and say, that was a great action we had yesterday. And just kind of treating that person as if they also want what we want. Like, we all want justice. We're in this together. And so breaking through this idea that you're, again, of course, you're working at the same time. It's sort of, maybe you can call it a double consciousness. I mean, you are working for a certain goal, but you refuse to refuse to recognize that these two sides are somehow opposed.
Yeah. It's very difficult. Well, because even when I read a book on this Narmada issue, which was edited by John Reyes and Samson, my sister-in-law, and a third person I forget. And there were so many different sides to the story that exactly what my point, one of my points was, it is somebody's voice is coming through. Is it disturbing you all as well? Oh, maybe only I'm hearing it. So when you, the point I was trying to make is that when we approach it through the mind, and we are fragmented, we can't help it. I mean, each one of us is fragmented. We are mind heavy. And if the inner work is not going on simultaneously and integrated, as you very rightly pointed out, then we tend to opposing. You don't hear this voice coming in? Okay, that's only me. So then we get into this polarized kind of position, which causes a lot of grief. Now I keep getting a very loud man's voice figuring out somebody's sound system in another room. Yes, Kathy, and we fall to the scientific mind and try to change only one variable. We are not separate. Yeah.
I'm not sure, Urmila, I'm not sure it's exactly what you're getting at, but I couldn't help but be reminded of the Yes Men. They, for example, in Bhopal, when the 20th anniversary of the gas disaster in Bhopal, they posed as they impersonated an official from Dow Chemical and went on the news to say that we are going to compensate all the families, we're going to take care of all the medical expenses, clean up the factory, we're going to spend whatever, we have $12 billion budgeted for this, and we're going to do all of these things. And which is what the company honestly should have done. So they just decided to, of course this was fraudulent because the company, they were not representing the company, but they gave an example of what the company could and should do with its within its budget and to meet all of this. And they've done this in many cases. They've gone, I mean, they're brilliant. You should look up the Yes Men. They impersonate the oppressor and speak what they feel that they could do to make the situation right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Since you didn't get my point, maybe I'll try and make it clearer. What I'm saying is that when do you feel this point? It's not about getting the point, but
I mean, I'm probably too mind heavy to recognize that there is that fragmentation. I mean, when you say it sounds reasonable, but I can't really say that I personally have felt it.
In the body and in the spirit and in the heart, do you feel that fragmentation? Okay. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that since we are mind heavy, we tend to look at all these things like you said in your example, of looking at things in a polarized way. And when you start getting more into the heart and the body and the spirit, I have an example of the Learning Society's conference we had recently, in which I think we really got out of the usual ways of doing things, and especially around money. And things worked out in such a hard way that I can't, I mean, it's a long story, so I can't go into now. But I've seen this again and again in my own personal life, and people have shared me. The Learning Society, where was this? It was at the Mahindra United World College earlier this year. And Manish was insisting that we don't worry about accounts, and we don't, start seeing who paid and who didn't pay, and we just have an open, generous, hearted, attitude, and enjoy the abundance where people were giving other things. They're sharing all their gifts, doing work for free for the conference. And in the end, the whole thing just, and I know we've had this discussion before, I'm going to say it again, magically, the accounts evened out at the end. And even though it was looking quite bad a few days before that. And so, and it all happened because of the relationship which was being built between Mahindra World College, between us, between the Sodexo Kitchen. And so I felt that when we got out of this headspace of making accounts and being very rational and scientific about, what, I mean, are we going to cover costs or not? And we went into this deep appreciation and gratitude of what everyone had brought, not just money, but all the other gifts. The whole atmosphere changed, the whole feel changed, the whole energy changed, and that went a long way to helping in the money issue, because people were much more open to looking at accounts in a different way and solving things in a different way. My concern with these kinds of examples is that the people who attend largely come from the wealthier segments of society. At least the average level would be far above average. Okay. You mean learning societies also?
In a tribal situation, I mean, the kind of sharing you're talking about, definitely, so I've observed it in other situations, but, I mean, because, a lot of, they don't necessarily talk about it the way we do. In learning societies, there's a kind of a big deal is made out of this. And I feel like, there's an elephant in the room, which is that, I mean, most of the people attending are of above average means. So.
Okay. Actually, this time we had a lot of people, at least one of the people could not afford to pay. And so I don't think that they were all some group you mean, and I don't have enough of personal experience in the areas where you are working. Right. Is any of this making sense to anyone else? Would anyone like to ask a question? Or Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Kaija. Okay, Kaya. Okay, Kaya. Thank you. So Kaya, what were you interested in? Yeah, right. Of what Aravinda was saying. Okay, you're wondering how that came up. Okay, we were saying that if we the change in the outer world is in my presentation. I was saying that it's the outer world is a reflection of our inner world, and that we have to start with inner work. And Aravinda was saying that we have to integrate both, which I completely agree with. Because Aravinda herself is involved in a lot of activist work in rural India. I hope I'm right, Aravinda. And so, would you like to explain? I was saying that there's a lot of magic that happens when we open our hearts and we kind of our enough work causes us to be very compassionate, and then what comes from there, the kind of world
I think you explained it pretty well.
From the one we have now.
I think the example, maybe the first example I gave reflects, more truly what you were, trying to say. I was just offering some cases where I think that view runs into limitations, but we don't have to dwell on it. The first example being, I'm just going to put her name in the chat message so that other people can see it. This is the woman who, showed such incredible compassion, and actually talked the person who came with a gun into the school actually to put the gun down and surrender to the police.
Yes, and another thing, Kaya, I was saying was that I feel the need today, literally the need of the hour, is love and support in primary relationships. Yeah. And that if we had, and a lot depends on having a healthy feeling of self-worth. And I don't know if it's education. I tend to feel that it's the education system that is robbing us of our feeling of self-worth, which it makes it difficult for us to be compassionate towards others because we're so lacking ourselves. So I felt that we really need a lot of support in the basic unit of family. Since we're all unschooling families, I feel that it's a really good way to start, because when you send your children away to school, it doesn't work so well. We're not really supporting our children when we send them away. And when they're home, we have a great opportunity to foster this kind of love and support,
Urmila,
which I feel will have very
I think that there's no doubt at all in my mind that we have to make these kind of connections and integrate. I mean, that all this inner work that we have to do it ourselves. I think the time that it kind of becomes problematic for me is when people, when one suggests to someone else who is facing some kind of oppression that they have the inner work is what's going to get them out of this, and not the work that's in the world. It becomes, and I have seen some of these so-called gurus of the inner work talk like that. Talk as if the public problems and political problems could all be solved if only people went through this kind of inner healing process. And it's a way of maybe blaming the victim or just ignoring the actual inequalities. And since many of us, absolutely including myself, are privileged, or however you want to put it, it kind of just becomes a way of not recognizing these kinds of inequalities and oppressions that we're part of. But if we're not telling somebody else to do this, if we are directing this at ourselves, then yes, I think it's deeply important that we do this.
Yeah, I absolutely get what you mean, because I've recently I had someone in my house who was full of pain, and another person was giving her this advice, and it wasn't very helpful at all. So yeah, and again, that's a chicken and egg. The person who acts all self-righteous and blaming is the person who themselves is suffering from the same problem. I was trying to bring that also out in my in the presentation, where all this is very connected and interconnected and very chicken and egg. You don't know which way to start, where to start from. It's more to bring an awareness to that rather than, and I don't have the right to describe it as a solution to the world's problem. It's more like I'm putting it forward as a suggestion. As I said, probable solutions are not even, I don't even know if it is a solution at all, but it's just my experience and what I'm feeling about it at the moment myself. And so whoever resonates with could maybe focus on this more in their daily life, their relationships and the inner work, and their own healing and the healing of people immediately around them. Absolutely, it's all connected. I feel it's what you said right at the beginning, that it has to be integrated. That the world change, while you're going around changing the world, while an activist goes around doing their work, or a social worker, or a teacher, or a parent, I feel if we keep learning and introspecting and looking deeply into our own words and our own actions while we're going about it, that kind of builds our compassion, and that is the inner work. While you're doing the work that you're doing, having a greater, being more sensitive and aware of how one is behaving, how one is speaking, and how one is dealing with the situation, and how it's landing on the other people and the whole situation. Yes, this compassion is necessary for sexual work. I think Nikki has just sent us the paper, so you can save it and read it for those who came in late. Have you received it? According to my computer clock, we have 2 minutes left. Is that right, Marie?
That's what I have as well. And
Is
so
there anything anyone would like?
I'd love to take a second to just thank you so much, Urmila, for coming and for sharing your insights with us. And I'd like to let everyone know that this has been recorded, and as soon as we're done here, that's going to be uploaded to the website, so anybody who wants to review this later is able to see it as well. In order for that processing to happen, we all need to leave this chat room. So if you all just click on the window and turn that off when you're ready to leave, then we'll get the recording processed. So thank you so much. And do you have a few concluding remarks, Urmila?
Okay, yes. Thank you so much, Marie. Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed sharing it. Aravinda, I will send you I will keep sending it to everybody, the paper.